About this with a second-ranking member in the United States Senate, Democrat. He is member of the Judiciary Committee. Let's bring in Dick Durbin from Illinois. Thank you so much, Senator, for being with us. Let's just start by getting your reaction to what you've seen over the past 24 hours in the president's press conference and where we go from here.
Well, Joe, I can tell you there was a different press conference yesterday, as we all know. The president, who'd been talking about Easter and we're going to get through this in a hurry, had a different song yesterday. He obviously had been prevailed upon by the public health experts. The numbers are really incredible and heartbreaking. To think that we could lose 100,000 Americans to this virus and that the number may go up dramatically from there. I'm in Springfield, Illinois, in my backyard of my home. This town has about 110,000 people in it. That's an indication of the kind of magnitude we could be talking about, deaths from this virus.
Senator Durbin, it's Willie Geist. Good to see you this morning. Your governor in the state of Illinois, Governor Pritzker, said yesterday that he and his state and your state have received only 10% of the equipment it's requested from the federal government to begin to treat and prepare for what may be coming in hospitals across the state. What's your analysis of how ready the state of Illinois is, and specifically how ready those big city hospitals are in Chicago?
Willie, we're holding our breath. There's 6,000 cases, roughly, as you see on the screen now. Have been reported in Illinois. Today, the number is likely to grow. I talk to the governor almost every day, and yesterday he said he felt like a shipping clerk. He was calling the major airlines that he knew the CEOs to be available and asking them, begging them to help Illinois secure goods from China, PPE from China. They couldn't get flights out, cargo flights out. You know, I've got a very talented governor here. He's dealt with big business. But to think this is his responsibility to airlift what should have been in our national stockpile is incredible at this moment. Yes, we're worried about the numbers. It could go from 6,000 to 3 or 4 times that amount next week. We're worried about what it's going to do for our hospitals, both downstate and particularly in the city of Chicago, where there's a denser population. Very concerned about it. We're doing everything conceivable to tell people, stay home, sit down, take it easy. Let's get through this together.
Well, Senator, what's the reason, do you think, the president is not using the full force of the Defense Production Act in every way possible? Some say that the profiteering would then not be happening, and perhaps he's got a financial interest.
I don't know about that.
Can't imagine that would take a priority right now. But what else would be the reason?
Mika, I have to say my friend Chris Murphy, who was on earlier, put his finger on it. I think there are some ideologues in the White House who just say, wait a minute, if the president steps into the marketplace, that is not what Republicans are all about. But if there was ever a moment in the history of the United States where the president ought to use every power at his disposal to mobilize this nation, to make sure we have what we need to get through this thing, this is that moment. And the president finally leaned a little bit toward General Motors a few days ago. That's it. There are so many other areas where all of us as members of the Senate and the House are working with our governors trying to find sources for this protective equipment. I wasn't elected to do that. I'll do what it takes to help my state, but that should be with presidential leadership.
Well, and you're exactly right, Senator. These conspiracy theories that people are throwing out about the president, no credibility there. And also no credibility to the president's conspiracy theories that doctors and nurses and hospitals are somehow stealing.
Good Lord.
Stealing these masks and reselling them on the black market. Talk about how chaotic it has been, where all the governors are having to compete against each other, having to negotiate against each other, and having to negotiate even against Donald Trump's own administration, driving those prices way up.
Our governor was telling me about a producer in our state who has this equipment, who is just playing hard to get when it comes to making it available. He's looking for a better price in another state. Let's be honest about it. And that, to me, is outrageous. This is as bad as any profiteering during a war, and a president, as FDR did in World War II, ought to be speaking out and saying this is unacceptable and un-American. We're going to provide these resources. Profits be damned. The American people need to survive. And I want to say another thing while we're at it. When I watch the president's press conference, when he starts practicing medicine without a license, I tense up to think of all the Americans listening to the promises he's making about drugs whose names he can barely pronounce. You know, for goodness sakes, turn this over to Dr. Fauci. He's the one who's the expert on the issue. The president is not. He is not a doctor.
Well, and of course, talk show hosts that support the president, that promote this, and even doctors that come on that promote this, they're demagogues and quacks, and it's very dangerous until these drugs are approved safely. Senator, thank you so much for being with us. Would love for you to come back and talk about the economic impact of this on Americans and where we go next. But thank you so much. We appreciate you being on. Willie, I'm sorry, go ahead, Senator.
Now that I've learned how to set up the studio on my deck in my backyard, I'm ready to come in and help you.
All right,
great.
sounds great. Thank you so much, Senator. Great to see you. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.